Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and we have some new War Within alpha development notes, which means, once again, we have a new video. So I guess these are going to be just every Thursday on this channel. As soon as the notes come out, I will record them 11 minutes later, actually, because I was busy making a video ranting about Season 4, so oopsie. But okay, here we go. We've got new zones and delves, Hallowfall coming out, a zone that I think a lot of people are really looking forward to aesthetically, so there may be some content, video content of me just flying around looking at that zone coming up on this channel. More likely there will be something I do during streams at some point. We also have new dungeons coming out. Now, I know that I said in my last video of this sort that I was planning to do the 2 new dungeons from last week and make videos on them. Didn't get around to doing that last week, so now I have a 4 dungeon backlog that I need to get to doing on alpha and actually get some videos created for. So I will try and do those, no guarantees. We also have a big update to warbands here. Actually, the best news that I've seen. I've only read this far and then I hit start recording, so we'll have to see if there's even cooler stuff further down below. But class set tokens from Legacy raids, Shadowlands and earlier, are now warbound and can be transferred to characters on the account. This is a huge change because this was something that when they were talking about warband stuff, they were like, oh yeah, you can go back and do old raids and you can collect the transmog for anybody except for tier sets. Neglecting the problem being that like tier sets are at least 50%, if not more, of the appearances that people hunt for in old raids, right? So the fact that those are now being made, effectively farmable on any of your characters, right? Whatever boss you do, it drops whatever tier tokens it does. You just send them to the appropriate characters. Great fix to this. Or you don't even send them, right? You just throw them in your warbank, and later on you check your warbank on your characters and activate the right tokens and get the right appearances. Phenomenal. And the developers note here, based on community feedback and to match our overall philosophy on transmog collection, class set tokens are now warband, allowing them to be transferred to alts in order to collect the transmog of your choice. Current expansion tier set tokens will remain unchanged from their previous status of bind on pickup, as they represent a large amount of power for the character that collects them. That makes sense, right? Of course, we don't want you to be able to, do a raid on your priest to get 4-piece for your warrior in a current season. Do a raid on your, monk to get 4-piece for your moonkin in the current season, and then your moonkin's like, oh, I don't actually put on 4-piece anyways, and they're like, oh, okay, oops. But anyways, character level. We have some notes here as well, which is basically just that they're now 75 to 78 zones on alpha, so in theory, you should make a new character. In practice, a lot of people don't do that. It's usually fine, but that is what you're supposed to do on alpha if you want to test the new stuff. We also have new hero talents available for playtesting in Public Alpha 3. Arcane for Priest, which is Holy and Shadow, highly devout and deeply connected to the light and shadow. They can be blessed from higher beings to enter into an ascended state, becoming an ultimate version of themselves. Yeah, the Holy Shadow overlap for Priest, I think, is the hardest one conceptually. So I'm really excited to see what they've done with Arcane. I'll have a video on that out on this channel, likely in the next day or two as well. Because, of course, right, like Holy and Disc, obvious, right? You've got like, okay, there's a Holy overlap there. Shadow and Disc, there's a Shadow overlap there, right? But Holy and Shadow, how do you have something that is in that identity space that's not just Disc, right? Because Disc has always been like, oh, Holy plus Shadow, right? So I think Archon, this sounds like a cool way of going about it. Let's see what the talents are. That'll be something in another video on the channel. Fatebound is out for Rogue, which I believe is the first of the assassination playable hero talent trees, but the other one is still not there, it looks like. Fatebound eagerly act as the hand of fate, sowing chaos into well-laid plans. Guided by the whims of a flipped Fatebound coin, they deliver the ending their enemies are destined for, the ending they deserve. So they're trying to find an overlap here between Sin and Outlaw, and this seems cool. Yeah, like, the Outlaw randomness flipped coin thing, and then having that, sealing enemies' fates. It's kind of an assassination thing. I don't know. We'll have to see what that one is. I'm very excited for whatever the Rogue hero talent trees are. Of course, I've always got a soft spot for Rogue. That was one of the classes. That was the class I was maining when I started becoming like a WoW streamer and stuff. So certainly got a soft spot for it. Hunter, we have a nerf to Symphonic Arsenal and buffs to Sentinel and Lunar Storm damage for the Sentinel tree. I have no takes really on any notes of this sort in PTR and Alpha. I basically never have a take on. Sun Fury, though, we do have an update for Glorious Incandescence, which I believe is when you get those free meteor storms on your like 6th Fire Blast or something. And this one is now going to summon 4 meteorites down from 8. The cooldown reduction has been buffed though, so each meteorite is going to give you more cooldown reduction, and the damage has been increased. And the timing between them dealing their damage and giving you spell cooldown reduction has been better synchronized. Okay, so I mean, mostly just less graphics. Less graphics clutter on this ability, right? That's what we're seeing here. Spellslinger. For Arcane, we have a redesign on Controlled Instinct. So for 8 seconds after being struck by an Arcane Orb, 30% of the direct damage dealt by an Arcane Splinter is also dealt to nearby enemies, reduced beyond 5 targets. They now conjure 2 Splinters when they consume Nether Precision. Splintering Orbs now conjure 2 Splinters when they strike a target with their orb. But Arcane Splinter Storms now have a 20% chance to grant you clear casting, was 100%. We have, looks like a full rework coming in here to Arcane Mage. Now, this is a spec that I'm not very familiar with here, so I'll read out these talents, but I will not have much useful to add here. I actually plan to play some Arcane this season to kind of, the last time I really played Arcane was like Legion at this point, so definitely a spec that has rusted in my brain, and I intend to kind of relearn. But so there's a new talent now, Energized Familiar. During Time Warp or other similar effects, your Arcane Familiar fires 4 bolts instead of 1. Damage from your Arcane Familiar has a small chance to grant you up to 2% of your max mana. Eureka says when a spell consumes clear casting, it deals 25% more damage. Wizened Wit says the cast time of Arcane Blast is reduced by 10%, which is a choice node with Presence of Mind. Arcane Battery says each time you consume clear casting, you gain increased spell damage for 30 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. And this is a 2-point talent for, effectively you'll have 8% increased spell damage permanently, full uptime with this. So likely pretty good efficient points there. Time Loop says when you gain a stack of Arcane Battery, you have a small chance to gain another stack of Arcane Battery. This effect can trigger off itself. And that doesn't seem particularly right. Are you going to just keep your 4 stacks? So like a time loop just is going to help you build it sooner. Unless these things are like overlapping but not refreshing stacks. This seems like probably not good. Maybe I'm misunderstanding though. Ether Attunement says while at maximum stacks of Arcane Battery. Aha! Nope, I'm not misunderstanding. There was something that I hadn't read yet. While at maximum stacks of Arcane Battery, your next Arcane Missiles consumes Arcane Battery, dealing 150% increased damage to your primary target, and also fires at up to 4 nearby enemies. Okay. So this is that's the reason that Time Loop would be good. Cool. Nether Precision's damage bonus increased to 30% is a new talent for Lay Sight, or there's Lay Drinker. I guess these aren't necessarily a choice node with each other. They have similar names, which makes me think they are, but it doesn't say they're a choice node with each other. So Lay Drinker says every 6 times you consume Nether Precision, your next Arcane Blast echoes, repeating its damage at 50% effectiveness to the primary target and up to 2 nearby enemies. We have a new talent for improved Touch the Magi. Your Touch the Magi now accumulates 25% of the damage you deal. Magi Spark says your Touch the Magi now also conjures a spark, increasing the damage your target receives from your next Blast, Barrage, and Missiles by 25%. Upon receiving damage from all 3 spells, the spark explodes, dealing arcane damage to all nearby enemies, and this is a choice node with improved Touch the Magi. Nether Munitions says when Magi Spark or improved Touch the Magi detonates, it increases the damage all affected targets take from you by 8% for 12 seconds. Arcane Missiles has been redesigned. It can now only be cast when you have clear casting, and the wording of talents that are associated with missiles has been updated to reflect this change. Nether Precision has been redesigned. Consuming clear casting increases the damage of your next 2 blasts or barrages by 20%. Familiar has been redesigned. Casting Arcane Intelligence also summons you a familiar that attacks your enemies and increases your max mana by 10% for an hour, and it's now a passive. Love it. Finally, mages are going to cast Arcane Intellect in my... is it Arcane Intellect or is it Arcane Intelligence? Hang on. In my groups. So they got their familiar. I guess they were already casting it for themselves. The problem is just if you don't have it and they already have it, they don't cast it. Unless you give them a weak aura. Illuminated Thoughts has been redesigned. Actually, that's what they should do with this. Arcane Familiar should be like, oh, while your entire group or raid has Arcane Intelligence, then you get a familiar. I guess then if somebody died and got battle resed, you'd lose your familiar. But you know what? Then you'd press Arcane Intellect. That's not something that mages do right now. I'm just saying that's free design advice for Blizzard right there. Illuminated Thoughts have been redesigned. Clear Casting has a 5% increased chance to trigger, and spells that consume Clear Casting deal 5% more damage. Concentration's been redesigned. Casting Arcane Blast has a small chance to make your next cast of Arcane Blast free. Prismatic Barrier improved is now baseline. Many talents have had their positions changed and moved around and stuff. Rule of Threes is no longer a choice node with Familiar. They've removed Foresight, Nether Tempest, Reverberate, Mana Gem. Mana Gem? Die Mana Gem. I don't know much about Arcane, again, as I've said, but I do know that all the Arcane mages I know hate Mana Gems, so... Oops. I hope you guys couldn't hear that. But yeah, I guess I'm glad to see it go. I'm sad to see it go because it means mages are happier, but it did sound like a really annoying talent. Radiant Spark, Harmonic Echo, and Cascading Power. We have one small change here to Fire, which is Controlled Destruction, now has a stack cap of 50, and Pyroblast now increases damage the target takes from your Ignite by 1%, was 2%, so nerf there. Frost has a new talent, Death's Chill. While Icy Veins is active, damaging an enemy with Frostbolt increases spell damage by 1%. Fractured Frost has been redesigned. While Icy Vein is active, your Frostbolts hit up to 2 additional targets, now 1-point talent. This reminds me of Necrolord ability for Frost Mage, the Bone Magus thing. But this combo is obviously pretty potent, right? If you're in a 3-target situation, your Frostbolts are going to be giving you 3% spell damage each time you cast them. Of course, as you start getting up to higher target counts, you start being more sad again because you don't want to be casting as many Frostbolts, right? More of your globals are Blizzards, Orbs, that kind of stuff. But I guess in exactly like 3-target situations, this could be quite a build. Hailstone's now 1-point talent. Fractured Frost, Freezing Winds have swapped places, and Cold Front and Coldest Snap have swapped places as well. Ret Pala got a big rework last week. They've got a little bit of more coming this week. Radiant Glory replaces Avenging Wrath or Crusade. Wake of Ashes grants you 10 or 12 seconds of Avenging Wrath or Crusade. So if you have Crusade talented, you're getting 12 seconds. If you have Wings talented instead, or not Crusade, you're going to get 10 seconds. And your other damaging abilities have a chance to grant you Wings or Crusade for 5 or 6 seconds instead. Very cool. Very cool. So Wake of Ashes grants it for you guaranteed, and then you can just proc it, but then you can't press it yourself. Red currently has a playstyle where your Wings uptime is actually already pretty high, but having it be like a proc thing, like this has some of those sort of deep-rooted elements, random procs things that like Ellie Shaman has, but also you have the ability to like activate it, right? Like you press Wake of Ashes and it wingses you. That's pretty cool. I don't know if it's good, but that is at least somewhat cool sounding. And of course, it will still function with the Hero of the Sun, Keystone, and Capstone talents, which probably means it will be good with them. Like, probably that means that this is the right way to play with that, right? Because you're going to get more of those per minute than if you were pressing Wings the old-fashioned way. Expurgation now rolls over the remaining damage values when reapplied. Templar slash damage over time now rolls over remaining damage value when reapplied. Boundless Judgment now additionally increases the chances of your judgments to trigger High Lord's Judgment by 50%. Templar Strike's damage has been increased and its cooldown has been increased. Wake of Ashes now sends its cone attacks towards where your camera is facing rather than where your character is facing. What the hell? Okay, that's so weird. Almost everything in this game is, you know, character facing, right? Like, but if you're spinning your camera around and you press this, it's you know, we're kind of used to being able to turn your camera freely to look at stuff without it affecting any of your buttons, right? As long as you're not turning how your character's facing. I wonder if there's ever going to be a min-max here where you know, you are fighting 5 mobs, so you want your Wake of Ashes to hit all of them, but then you want the cone attacks just to hit one. I don't know if they do split damage or what. And so you like, you know, you pull out your protractor, put it on the screen, and you're like, all right, yeah, calculating trajectory, you adjust your camera to be facing the right way. I don't know. Shield of Vengeance is now choice node with Aegis of Protection after the second talent gate. Aegis of Protection now only increases the effectiveness of Divine Protection by 20%. Okay, so it's only affecting Divine Protection, but it is by 20% instead of 10%. And yeah, of course, now if you take this, you're not going to have Shield of Vengeance. Avenging Wrath and Crusade have been moved up to where Shield of Vengeance was in the talent tree. Wake of Ashes have been moved up to where Avenging Wrath and Crusade was. And Seething Flames have been moved up to where Wake of Ashes was. Okay, so a little readjustment of where everything is. Warlock. Diabolist. Soulburn can no longer trigger Demonic Art or Diabolic Ritual, and Demonic Art now lasts 60 seconds instead of 20 for each greater demon. Hellcaller, Mark of Xavius has been redesigned. Agony and Wither damage has been increased by 20 to 25%, and the cooldown of Vile Taint and Cataclysm is reduced by 5 seconds. Channel Demon Fire and Internal Combustion now function with Wither. Soul Harvester. Eternal Servitude now reduces the cooldown of Feldom by 90 seconds, was 120. When Soul Anathema is reapplied, any remaining damage will be applied to the new Soul Anathema. So they've done this change now for a couple of different dots that makes it a little bit more powerful when you're using them, when you're reapplying them, right? Like it's the Devouring Plague type effect, right? Where you can kind of accumulate the damage and you can stack it multiple times, and you're not just like, oh, let me just pandemic this dot, right? And you instead have a thing where it's like, oh, cool. Every time I press this, I'm getting full value. Shared Fate now deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. Affliction. Malefic Rapture now deals Shadow Flame damage. Okay, that's good. It'll proc our Aranagan Broodkeeper rings, if anybody's still wearing those in War Within, which they won't. Inevitable Demise has been removed. There's a new talent for Improved Malefic Rapture, which reduces its cast time and increases its damage. Relinquished now causes Agony to only generate 10% more soul shards, not 25%. Volatile Agony now deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. Call the Weak has been redesigned. Rapture's damage is increased by 8% for each enemy it hits, up to 5 enemies. So there was a lot of like uncapped AoE nonsense in here. A lot of ways that Affliction was scaling out of control with multiple target counts, and they have toned that down in this build with this, soft cap on Volatile Agony and a hard cap on value at the 5th target for Call the Weak, although not a hard cap in damage, right? A hard cap in increased damage on Malefic Rapture. Of course, Malefic Rapture hitting more targets is going to be worth more damage up until like the 20th target when the game's hidden square root scaling starts coming in. Demon Lock has a new talent, Shadowcaster, increases the damage of Hand of Gul'dan by 20% and Demon Bolt by 10%. New talent for Pact of the Arid Ruin. Arid Ruin, I don't know what that is. When Doom is removed, you summon a Doom Guard that casts 5 Doom Bolts before departing. Each Doom Bolt deals shadow damage, so this is just their set bonus from Season 3, right, of Dragonflight. Mark of Shatug is a new talent that says Wicked Maw causes the target to take 20% additional shadow damage from your demons. Ferocity of Farg, which I believe is one of the 2 Antoran Shadowhounds. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's one of the 2 from the second boss in Antorus the Burning Throne. Go check the Dungeon Journal and see if I am right about that. Increases the attack speed of your Dreadstalkers by 10 or 20%, and their crit chance by 15 or 30%. Rune of Shadows increases all damage done by your pet by 4%, reduces the cast time of Shadow Bolt by 25%, and increases its damage by 20%. That sounds like a no-brainer of a talent. Demonic Brutality, crits from your spells and your demons deal 4% increased damage. Fiendish Prowess increases the attack speed of your primary team. I mean, these all just seem like generic good talents. It's kind of just a question of where they are in the tree and how many free points you have. But these are the kind of talents where it's like, if you ever have utility options or whatever, you just got to take these first, right? So, but maybe these are replacing other similar no-brainery talents. Improved Demonic Tactics increases your primary Felguard's crit chance equal to 30% of your crit chance. Doom has been redesigned, inflicting a pending Doom on your target, dealing shadow damage and an additional shadow damage to enemies within 10 yards after 20 seconds. Consuming a demonic core reduces the duration of Doom by 3 seconds, and it's a 30-second cooldown. Okay, so you cast the Doom rather than getting Doom brand procs or whatever the Season 3 set bonus was. The following talents have been removed: Demonic Knowledge, Nether Portal, Nerzul's Volition, Gul'dan's Ambition, Stolen Power, and Heavy-Handed. Sacrifice Soul, so they moved a bunch of stuff. Sacrifice Souls, Houndmaster Stratagem, which has been renamed to Wicked Maw, which I guess isn't one of the ones we've read yet. Doom and Summon Demonic Tyrant have been moved, and Dread Calling and Felguard icons have been updated. Warrior, there's a note that's already stricken through here about slam damage being normalized and being increased, so it looks like that is not happening, actually. Here, the new change is slam damage increased by 130%, and the arms slam damage bonus has been reduced to 50%, was 75%. So a little bit weird. Slam isn't a button you press except on arms, and even then not very often. And it looks like they want to make it more... It's weird because like it's one of those abilities like Primal Strike for Shamans or whatever, which is in your spellbook, but you're not supposed to put it on your bars. But like that's weird. It's weird when you boost your character or whatever, you boost your warrior and you're looking through your spellbook and you're like, oh, I need to put slam on my bar. What should I keep on that to? And a warrior tells you like, no, we don't use that here. That's that button doesn't go on your bar. So I don't know what they're trying to accomplish with this, but I think they should just be more willing to have those sorts of effects get like replaced by something for the specs that don't use them, rather than just having them sit in your spellbook and never be cast. You just replace Slam with Shield Slam for Prot Warrior, for instance, right? And then mission accomplished. Blade Storm damage increased by 70%. Ravager damage decreased by 10%. Okay, so a little bit more, particularly for Slayer. I believe Slayer has incentive to be playing Blade Storm. That's going to be pretty good there. I played some Slayer Fury Warrior in a dungeon I did very little damage on. But of course, that's, some of that might be I suck, and some of that also is just everything is very unbalanced. But Blade Storm damage up by 70% is going to be huge for Slayer Warriors. Arms, Cleave cooldown has been reduced to 3 seconds from 6. Battle Lord no longer resets the cooldown of Cleave. Storm of Swords now triggers from Whirlwind or Cleave and reduces the rage cost of your next Whirlwind or Cleave. Fervor of Batter now also triggers from Cleave. Dreadnought's damage has been reduced by 58%, and Strength of Arms now also increases overpower damage by 15%. Fury, 43% increased damage on Bloodthirst. Blood Craze now triggers from Raging Blow instead of Bloodthirst. Deft Experience now causes Bloodthirst to extend your Enrage effect by 0.5 or 1 second if you are Enrage. Switch Strikes now increases Bloodthirst's rage generation by 1 or 2 rage. Crushing Force now increases the damage of Bloodthirst by 10 or 20%, and the critical chance of it by 5 or 10%. That's actually, crit chance of Bloodthirst is very, very good as well, so that's probably very good. Blade Storm now generates 10 rage per damage event for Fury, or 20 with Storm of Steel, and the Slam rage cost has been removed. Interesting. I guess it's just for leveling. I guess these Slam changes are maybe for leveling. I don't know, before you have all your buttons. Professions. Engineering. With this week's build, Engineering has been enabled on Professor Instructor. Although the profession is not entirely complete, a majority of the items should be in and ready for testing and feedback. Items with clear use or equipped text present should be fully implemented. Its recipe lineup is similar to Dragonflight. Single stat, full budget goggles and bracers are available to be crafted, with goggles exclusive to engineers and bracers usable by everyone. Both items possess a Tinker socket, which can take any of the new Tinkers added in War Within. Additionally, popular Tinkers from Dragonflight have a refurbished variant you may discover with specs which interact with Algari optional reagents. Of course, a variety of consumables and toys also await, several of which may be particularly appealing to raiders. We'll have to see what they've done here. Every patch or two, there's always something broken and something useful in engineering somehow. Often it's old stuff. Razageth, for instance, back in progression on Razageth, we used Wrath of the Lich King boots things that you could click to give yourself fall damage reduction and do damage when you land, and we'd use that on the first intermission. That was really quite good, actually. So I'm curious to see what all the engineering stuff is. I'll probably make a video on it hopefully there will be a nice Wowhead post that just summarizes all the stuff for me, and I can just read that post instead of having to go into alpha myself and level up engineering to look at anything. So yeah, we'll see. Any Wowhead people watching this, go ahead and make that post urgently, and then send me a DM. Potion Bombs are a selection of new items that possess the power, budget, and share the cooldown of ordinary combat potions and can be used anywhere that potions are allowed. When thrown, they deal a small amount of damage split between all enemies caught in the blast, but more importantly, provide a small buff to up to 5 allies caught in the blast. The potency of this buff is the budget of the potion divided by 5, even if fewer than 5 targets are hit. This is intended to be a considerable potion option for support-oriented players, or those who feel their personal potion for the fight is less impactful than a boost distributed between their allies. I mean, that sounds probably really good for... So the thing is, buffing 5 allies is not great in M+, because you're buffing... First of all, they need to be caught in the blast, so you need all 5 people to be stacked. And one of the people you're buffing is a tank. One of the people you're buffing is a healer. One of the people you're buffing is an augmentation evoker, maybe. So that kind of sucks, right? You're kind of not getting actually that much value there. Like, yeah, it's nice that my pot, instead of buffing me as a tank, for instance, is now buffing 2 real DPS for instead by 20% each. Like, that's maybe better, but that doesn't feel particularly good. And it especially doesn't feel particularly good if I have to try and get everybody stacked for this. But in Raid, this is going to be extremely good, right? You just throw this on your melee stack, or you throw this on your, Warlocks or whatever, if they're stacked, which often ranged are. And if you're a tank or a healer, that's going to be definitely better than you using your own potion. So I'm not sure that gameplay is going to be fun, but at least it's going to be powerful in that spot. I'm definitely skeptical of this, though. This does seem weird. I feel like the at least buffing the allies thing should have a larger radius than the damaging the enemies thing as well. Like, man, if I have to try and get everybody stacked in like a 5-yard range for this to be good, in M plus in particular, I don't think you're ever considering really using something like that. In raid, yeah. And I don't know, the thing is, like, increasing the power of support-oriented playstyles, I think, is good, but when you're increasing support-oriented playstyle power by making it more fiddly to do, right, instead of by making it kind of less restrictive, less fiddly to do, I think you're going in the wrong direction, especially for the players that enjoy the support playstyle the most, right? Which I played Augmentation Evoker for Season 3, Mythic Plus pushing. I have embraced, the Passenger Princess lifestyle and, casting Prescience targeting the boss instead of targeting my allies most of the time, and just sitting back, living my life, not looking at details because it's bugged anyway, so who cares? And there's a lot of fun there. I can see why there's an appeal to a lot of players for that playstyle, but I don't think the overlap between people who enjoy, say, Augmentation Evoker and support is going to be very high with people that are going to enjoy, instead of just pressing a potion, or just not pressing a potion if we're being realistic with these sorts of players in a lot of cases, and instead like pushing a potion, getting a targeting reticle, and then trying to actually hit 5 allies with it. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, my initial belief is that this idea is cool, but this particular implementation seems suspicious to me. Finally, there's a new recipe acquisition system for engineering recipes called Inventing, from which most new recipes will be sourced from. They've used the word "from" twice here. You're not supposed to do that. That's an oopsie. When engaging with your profession, there are opportunities to receive or invent a prototype item. A prototype is a unique, low-quality, consumable version of almost every on-use recipe you can acquire. You have the option to use it and attempt to learn the recipe. It has a chance to backfire and leave you extra crispy. Or you can disassemble it into hastily scrawled notes, collect enough of the notes, and you'll be presented with a choice UI to pick from 2 or 3 schematics from all the War Within schematics you have yet to discover. As not all items can be prototyped, some are only sourced through notes, such as combat or profession equipment. Ultimately, the goal is to reward engineers for engaging regularly with their profession and provide the player with agency to make decisions about the recipes they pursue as early as possible. Once all schematics are known, you can continue to collect Warbound notes to expedite this process on your alts. We're excited to see how the system plays out and would love to hear your feedback. This sounds really cool. Obviously, at the start of the expansion, people might be annoyed as they are, not being offered the profession equipment or whatever that they want, the combat equipment that they want, right? The goggles. So hopefully there's a decent enough rate of acquisition for this that if somebody makes their main character an engineer, really wants to make themselves male goggles for the, first week that they get their first spark or whatever, hopefully they at least have a very good chance of being offered, that recipe if they're doing engineering like every day for the first 3 weeks of the expansion in that time frame. I don't know if that's realistic, though, so maybe you'll just have to go find another engineer who did manage to get that. But aside from that, this does seem very cool and thematic for engineering, so neat. Finally, we have some UI and accessibility changes. Drop-down menus have been updated. Areas of the quest log interface have been updated. A button for professions has been added to the micro menu where the spellbook previously was. The spellbook has been added to the talents frame. And minimize and expand functionality has been added to the spellbook frame. The UI and accessibility change that I need is I need a remind me later or don't remind me again button for you have unspent profession knowledge, because like most of my characters have unspent profession knowledge and I don't want to be reminded about it every time I log in. So that's the UI and accessibility change that I need. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of all the talent changes and stuff. I will have videos probably soon for Arcane and Fatebound. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.